there with the bubbling reactor, you'll get a sense of what I'm referring to. So it gives me great pleasure now to invite the speakers and a couple of other speakers you haven't heard from this morning up to the stage. I'll just introduce them. We've got Amit Chanan, CEO of Water Fiji and adjunct professor here at UTS, and Susan McCarthy, independent consultant working in the transition to the new economy, helping organisations chart that pathway through to the new economy. So can I invite Rock and Dave and Dana back up to the stage as well? I'm going to get things started with a few questions. Well, we covered a lot of ground there. I've got a few questions to, I guess, get the conversation going. They're pretty broad, intentionally. So to get started, the first one is probably aimed at our water utility friends here. What is the most important action you have underway now to foster a circular economy? And I might pass that firstly to Rob.
Thanks, Django. Look, there are many, so if you ask me one, I would probably struggle. There are many, but I would probably start by talking about changing the way we work, which is absolutely critical, because we can talk about all the sort of activities that we've got. We've mentioned the Upper South Grid Circular Economy Hub. We've mentioned a number of things that we're doing in terms of biogas to grid, in terms of all sort of things that are circular economy. But actually, this is all very good projects, but it's really important before we get to the project that it's completely embedded into the way we do things at Senior Water. So if there's one to be put at the top of the list, that would be this one. Changing how we do things at Senior Water and really embedding the circular economy principles into our way of thinking.
That makes a lot of sense. I might pass over to you, Amit, because I think you're facing probably quite different issues in your context. So, what would you say is the most important action you have underway?
Yeah, thanks, Django. A couple of things I'd like to share. I'd like to use the WASA Water Services Australia as a sort of framework of introducing water, a circular economy in water utilities. And it has 3 steps: sustain, regenerate, sustain, restore, regenerate. So sustain bit is all about minimizing your own waste. What we have in Water Authority of Fiji is a lot of NRW. So one of the biggest initiatives that we have just done is a performance-based contract to MIA, who are coming on board shortly. By November, they should be mobilizing. Is to minimize our NRW. So we currently have about 49% NRW. So that's non-revenue water. So every 100 liters that we produce, 49 liters get lost in the network because of aging infrastructure. So that's a significant challenge. That's a big project that we have started. And the second one, which is on that next step, which is about restore, is around wastewater treatment plants. 11 out of 11 wastewater treatment plants that we own are now at the end of their economic life, and we're going through redesigning and renewing those. The first cab of the rank is the biggest plant, which is in Kenoya, the capital city in Suva. So we've got already ADB support to redesign and upgrade this plant, and we're doubling its capacity. And we are, by design, we're putting in circular economy principles in that upgrade project. In fact, there's a workshop after morning tea where we want to have a bit of an iterative design in action and get your thoughts on what we are thinking in terms of designs and your views on what we should be thinking of. So those two, NRW reduction and the upgrade of our sewage treatment plants across the country are really current practical initiatives that we're doing to work towards that circular economy piece.
Okay, great. And Dana, you've worked in and around the water sector for a long time. From your perspective at the moment, what sort of actions have you seen that you think are I guess, important or really shaping our path forward?
Well, I think, can you hear me? Yep. Actually, what comes to mind probably is what's being done in other countries, and I think sometimes, you know, I know we talked about this before, and it's not across the board, but sometimes in terms of, you know, the nutrient recovery and reuse, costs can be so prohibitive. But I actually don't think it should be up to the utilities to have to foot that cost, because the benefits of recovering those nutrients are so broad, and they reach, you know, across the fertiliser industry, and there's farmer benefits, not just the environment, it's not just benefit to the water utility, it's a national security benefit as well. So I actually think if there's ways we can better share those costs to stimulate and get things moving, that would be one opportunity. And another one is to have a better enabling environment from government. And again, Liana talked about lots of good examples yesterday about how we can incentivise some of these kind of sustainable things, and it could be through incentives, but it could also be through targets. So say, for example, in Europe you have Germany and Austria who have mandated phosphorus recovery from wastewater treatment plants back to agriculture. So, you know, that sets the rules of the game, and then that can, you know, stimulate and facilitate things. And I think without those kind of enabling environments to stimulate and support, it's going to be hard to get things moving at scale and at the rate that we need to.
Awesome. And David, I'm going maybe slightly off piece to what I suggested, but maybe with the research and innovation hat on in Southeast Water, how is circular economy, I guess, being framed in that space? How is it showing up and being, I guess, being prioritised within the research and innovation?
It's helpful within our strategic plan that you can see it in the corporate plan, the strategic plan, where we want to go. In particular, there's in any number of places. One of them is the way there's a focus here at drive innovation at scale. So it says, yeah, we're going to try new things, and we're going to progressively keep trying them and step them through new scales to learn as we go. And we might get to certain scales and go, well, that didn't work, or let's put that on the shelf for a while, or yes, that was great, that is solving that problem for our customer community, let's do that. So things like I mentioned, the nice loo trailer, you know, that's another scaling that we're working through. We're looking at pyrolysis technology for biosalts to create biochar. We're planning our third scale of pilot plant, so just to progressively work through that. I think you asked somewhere in there about prioritisation. A really good question. In amongst digital transformations, data transformations, how do you get the circular economy in there as well? Water scarcity, water security in there as well. I think fortunately the modern water utility is seeing the bigger picture now and says, yeah, we do need to progress and play our role. This social licence comes up to deliver for our communities environmentally and talking to customers so that they expect us to be doing things like that. So I'll stop rambling there and let you pick up with someone else.
Or maybe to pick up on a theme that you led with, starting at the beginning, I might pass to Susan. Because Susan was at the beginning of Sydney Water's journey in circular economy. She was involved in putting together our first circular economy roadmap back in about 2019, I think.
Yep, that's right.
And has more recently helped us out on some work out at Upper South Creek, our ambitions for a circular economy hub. So maybe Susan, given your touch points with Sydney Water, what's your perspective of what we're doing and what maybe important actions you see us taking or could be taking?
Thank you, Django. I think embedding circular economy principles in everything that you do is the right place to start. And it's fantastic to see the way that Sydney Water has picked up on circular economy, embedded it in the strategy, and how fully committed Rock is to that direction, and how embedded it is in the long-term capital and operating plan. I think the next thing is to look at capability. So, do you have the right set of capabilities to be able to realise the vision? Because you're no longer just working in a closed loop. You need to expand your loops to involve your customers and your supply chain in different ways. And you need to start thinking about, if we're building a different set of products, how do we understand and connect with our market? How do we price and deliver those? Do we do that ourselves, or do we engage with other people who take byproduct and turn it into their own product? And I think the circular economy zone is a fantastic opportunity for you to start building a new way of operating. And you need to make sure that you've got the right people to work with you to imagine what that looks like, and to shift your decision-making structures and to enable you to work in that way.
I think this is a really important point you're making, Susan, because I guess the traditional way in the water industry to think about circular economy is to think about what we're doing, where actually when you think about circular economy, you're just a very small part of the circle. So thinking about how we interact not only with the supply chain, but actually with the different industries that are existing just next to us is critically important. And taking the example of biosolids, so for a very long time, the water industry has been using biosolids and apply biosolids on land, which, there's some carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus in biosolids, that's all good for land. But actually there's a much better way to extract value for the community in general from biosolids, and phosphorus extraction is one of them. Where do we do it? Working with the waste industry on biosolids, and how can we enhance the product with green waste, etc., etc. So there's actually the connection between the water industry and the different industry, from waste, energy, etc., is absolutely critical if we really want to use all the potential value that we've got in the water industry. So this is really important.
Might switch gears a little bit and ask about, I guess, the wider supply chain. I mean, you've touched on it here, but thinking about our stakeholders, and that might be suppliers or partners when it comes to producing new products, but also our retail customers and shareholders, regulators. What sort of support are you getting from those stakeholders? And you touched on any point here, and you pointed that stakeholder chain. And maybe, if there are any examples of where things are working well or where things haven't worked that we could learn from in the room. Anyone want to put their hand up first?
I'm happy to go first. I think Dana mentioned the word transformation, and one of Dana's colleagues, Juliet Willits, recently talked about transformative adaptation. In terms of concepts like circular economy in face of climate change, we do need to have a sort of transformational shift in the way we do plan, the way we engage with our stakeholders. In Fiji, what we have done in the last 18 months is a very widespread engagement with our stakeholders, not just customers, but policymakers outside the water sector, including all the government sort of ministries, private sector, to develop our sector strategy, water sector 2050. That is the plan over the next 3 decades in terms of where we need to take the sector to. It was the first time we actually had everybody in one room to talk about the challenges in terms of sanitation, in terms of water security. And what that allowed us to do was, for the first time, have conversations on the fact that our assets need investments, our water networks failing, our wastewater treatment plants are actually no longer compliant. Those were very open and very bold discussions, but it also allowed us to sort of share the responsibility of that on how to take it forward and think about innovative concepts like circularity in there. So engagement with the community and stakeholders in developing the water sector 2050 was something that we recently did in the last 18 months, and it has really made it the problem of investment and thinking about circular economy part and parcel of not just our thinking, but all our key stakeholders, including the shareholding ministers, thinking as well. And I think it's something that the multilateral funding partners have been very supportive in our case, because we do need their investments, and they certainly were very, very supportive of the way it went.
Right, and you said it's the first time that sort of strategy's been done in that way, in that level of engagement. Is there intent to follow that through, that process?
Yeah, certainly. So the strategy, as I said, is the first sort of step. What we are now working on is a monitoring and evaluation framework, so we can, rather than creating a glossy document and keeping it away, the framework is something that we do want to make sure that the cabinet gets reported to on its sort of implementation. Because we call the document is a water sector strategy, and it's not just a document of Water Authority of Fiji, it's a document for the whole of sector. So the ownership of it is actually with the monitoring and evaluation piece will be with the ministry. So we want to keep it alive and keep those stakeholders that contributed to its development engaged as we go on implementing it.
Anyone else want to pick up on that theme?
Yeah, look, I think the community, when we talk to our customers, they are absolutely supportive of the circular economy. It's almost a no-brainer when it doesn't cost more money. When it starts to be costing a bit more money than the sort of traditional solution, that's when we need to have a conversation with our customers. And when we do, because the water industry actually does it very well, when we do, our customers are saying that most of the time they're prepared to pay a bit more, provided that it's more circular, it's better for the environment, it's better for the sustainability of the planet. So the general consensus that we get from our customers is very positive. Sometimes it's more difficult to convince some of our stakeholders, and I'm thinking about shareholders, government shareholders, regulators, that are going to go for the cheap option rather than the sustainable option. So there's still more work to be done with, especially regulators, about where the society is at and what they are expecting us as water industry to deliver.
And you touched on your talk, the integrated water cycle management scheme in Western Sydney. which is, you know, a huge transformational circular economy project. What sort of conversations are you having with, you know, shareholding ministers and, you know, our pricing regulator, for instance, on the affordability of that approach and the broader economic benefits that are falling across sectors?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, this one. So probably I need to give a bit of background here. So Western Sydney is being developed at the moment. A few years ago, there was a study done by governments that was looking at the way to integrate the water cycle. And that was one of the critical part of it was to say, traditionally, stormwater management is done on lot, meaning you ask a developer to build their own stormwater treatments on their lot, and then the stormwater will then be drained and go somewhere. Obviously, when you do that, you need land to do the stormwater treatment, but usually the stormwater treatment is not very well done, and what goes back to creeks or the environment is not of very good quality. So a few years ago, there was a study done by government and saying, well, actually, there's probably a different way to do it. And this different way to do it was something that we very much pushed as Sydney Water, was to work on the integrated water cycle management. So using stormwater, keeping stormwater where it's being generated, infiltration, using it for irrigation, creating amenities for the community, etc., etc. And the study actually revealed that by doing that, it was creating a lot of value for the community. And from memory, I'm probably going to get that wrong, but it was something between 2 and 3 billion simply for Western Sydney of additional value for the community. So big difference. And it's not only money, it's also obviously having parks and gardens that are green and cooling the city and etc., etc. So that was acted then in government that Western Sydney would be developed according to these principles of integrated water cycle management and reusing stormwater in the landscape. But then development started, and obviously the assets, the infrastructure that you need to do for parks and gardens and ponds and infiltration basins and etc. needs to be paid by someone. And rightly so, the developers developing the lands were allocated in charge of all these investments. And that's probably where it started to be a bit more difficult, because we then had developers saying, well, why should I pay for this? It should be paid by someone else. And obviously there's no someone else except Sydney Water. And Sydney Water, we don't have any money. All the money that we get is coming from our customers and the bills that our customers are paying. So there was a very interesting discussion with the development community, which was about, well, look, you're buying a piece of land of, let's say, 10 hectares. If you would be in a traditional system, you would have actually to use maybe 1, 2, 3 hectares of your land that would be completely sterilized and that you could not be used for development, because actually you would have to build your own stormwater treatment facility. And in this way, you can actually buy your 10 hectares of land and develop the full 10 hectares, but you have to pay something for the sort of shared infrastructure that is going to manage stormwater in an integrated way. And then some developers then started to say, okay, I understand now. And then the conversation changed at that point in time. Not saying that they had to pay for the cost of development, but starting a different understanding. So it is, it's about changing the mindset of people, changing the mindset of the stakeholders that we're dealing with every day, and helping them to understand that actually there is a benefit for everyone in what we're trying to do.
Yeah, fascinating story. I'll ask one more question and then we might throw to the audience. I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but I think we're okay. This one is an old question. What's the most recalcitrant or biggest hurdle, recalcitrant issue or biggest hurdle in leading a transition to the circular economy? And like the first question, I'm sure there's a long list in people's mind, but I might go to you, David. What's something that's keeping you up at night?
I'll touch on it and then maybe others can agree or disagree or move it on. I think sometimes it is ourselves, our attitude, our drive for change, our appetite for trying new things. And this circular economy and climate action, everything seems to be new. So if we're not that prepared to try new things, we'll never make progress. I, at times, have conversations with people in our business where they're looking at, we need to change our treatment plants or a system in our network. They go into procurement exercise and they wipe out a whole bunch of great technologies that could be used because they're new. They haven't been proven yet. And so we're down back to 2 or 3 options that's how we've always done it. So we need to find ways of taking on the new, perhaps taking on a little bit more risk and going on the journey of that, the development of that new technology with it, and hopefully help actually bring that to the industry for others. So I just want to pick up, go somewhere different.
Yeah, that one resonates with me.
Yeah.
Dana?
There was a lot of different things going through my head. There are so many barriers and problems, but I actually wonder if one of the big issues, and again coming from the perspective that I'm coming from in food and phosphorus, is that, you know, unlike water and energy, food is not managed as a public good in this country. And it kind of should be, because we kind of need it. And I feel like because of that, it's left to the market, and phosphorus is tied up in all of that. It's left to the market to manage, and there are so many market failures that, you know, we won't go into. But I feel like if we got better at managing food and phosphorus as a public good and a human right, we might do things a lot better. And we had an Indonesian delegation come visit UTS a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to some of the food experts there and saying who manages food, you know, because they were looking to us for you know, leadership and ideas. And I said, well, how does it work in Indonesia? Whose responsibility is food? And they said it falls within the Ministry of Planning and Infrastructure. And I said, oh, are they a powerful ministry? And like, oh yes. And it's like, well, wow, imagine if we did that here. You know, we'd really get things going. And because I think, particularly with phosphorus and, you know, people living in urban centres, if we had urban planning on board and strategic urban planning, then we would design our systems a lot better in a much more integrated way that did integrate, you know, the water, energy, and food systems together. And again, there's a whole discussion we can have over for lunch or morning tea. But yeah, I'd say that's one big problem and one thing that we could work on.
Yeah, it's certainly something, if you think about the globalisation aspect of food production, there's another layer to it there when you think about the mismatch in supply and demand at a global scale, whether that could be better coordinated, but maybe get it right at a national scale first, Amit?
Thanks, Diego. In terms of the most recalcitrant sort of the hurdle, if you like, I think given the context of the Pacific, you know, the small island development states, and it's not just Fiji, but the other small island states, there is a rather loose or almost an absence of a regulatory framework. I think that is one of the bigger challenges, because if you have the ability to build a house in a shallow groundwater area with, you know, a septic system not connected or not regulated, and you can get away with it, the drive to do the right thing then just disappears. So the regulatory framework is a really important piece that's missing, and we're working on developing that. And the other piece is around the know-how and the right financial model. So the access to capital is relatively simple in a way, because there's a lot of development partners are willing to put money towards the capital side of things. But once you build the capital project, its operating model in terms of know-how, as well as the OpEx side of things, the maturity is missing. The tariff structure is such that needs to be reformed as well. So I covered that in my discussions yesterday, that a lot of research in the circularity and circular economy piece in institutions like this are about high-tech end. And they're not necessarily looking at that frugal innovation end, which are really critical for the developing countries. A friend of mine used to say, when Sydney water catches cold, the water consultant starts sneezing. So you have that ability to influence the market that is missing in entities like Water Authority of Fiji. But I wish to appeal that we do need to think about those frugal innovation parts as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And Susan?
Thanks, Django. I'm going to flip it on you. I want to talk about the opportunity, because I think,
I've got to come back to that. Go.
I thought you said your last question. Anyway,
Well,
let me
yeah,
flip.
go.
I was talking yesterday about how important innovators and entrepreneurs are as the drivers of economic transition and transformation. And I think that sometimes in the circular economy we don't focus on these very special people, and there's a lot of them in this conference. So how do we nurture the innovators and entrepreneurs? And I don't just mean in the private sector, I mean in the public sector, in the research community, in our First Nations, in civil society. We need people who can see the future, and we need to enable them to work together. We need to keep them safe in niches as they grow their ideas. We need Sydney Water and Fiji Water to create space for them to work, to help you shift your system. And there's all sorts of ways that we can build ecosystems around innovation. And I think one of the strong opportunities in New South Wales at the moment, and probably across the world, is what role does water play, and how do we imagine water systems in affordable housing? We're about to build blueprints for affordable housing in this state. What role does water play there? And how do we build it circular from the beginning?
Yeah, thanks. That's a really great point. I think it ties back a little bit to David's point too about the change curve with circular economy, and it's somebody who works in it, and I can speak from experience, it can be a tiring place to be if you're there for extended periods of time. So creating space for everyone in the room is a great positive point. I did want to come back to the opportunity question if we have time, but I want to give the floor to the audience. Got a hand over here straight up. Great.
Thanks for the amazing talks and the discussion. My name is Stefan from the University of Melbourne. One thing that has not been touched on is what I would call a fourth challenge in the water sector. So linking back to David's talk, and to me that is chemicals in water. So if we go back to the 1950s, there was a few chemicals in there, and now they have become, massive concoctions of chemicals that we don't understand. And some of them are not that friendly. So the question is, as we move towards a circular economy, including purified recycled water, are there any unintended risks with these chemicals that potentially could get concentrated in the loop, or we might get side streams that are concentrated that we need to discharge into the environment? Do these constitute an environmental risks? Have these things been thought about as we plan to move forward?
Okay, I'll start here. So the answer is yes. It's front of mind for everything we're doing. Obviously, we're lucky to live in a country where everything is heavily regulated, and rightly so. So public health is regulated. The number of parameters that we have to measure in water before we supply to our customers is it's a very long list, and again, rightly so. The environmental regulation is pretty strict, but sort of guide everything that we're doing. What's positive is that these regulations are changing, so they are evolving along the knowledge that the scientific community has and get every day. So that's changing as well. So there's no space for any cowboy technology in the water industry, which is going back to what David was saying, is sometimes a problem because it makes the adoption of new technology or innovation a lot more difficult.
I'll add to that. Agree. I think there is more space for research and science in this. I think your words, Stefano, unintended consequences is exactly what they are. What don't we know yet about? We talk about PFAS as an emerging contaminant. It's emerged. What is next? Are we really onto it as scientists and researchers? Do we truly understand? Chemical permits coming into Australia. There are still chemicals that can come in unpermitted, on low volume permits or cosmetic permits or things like that. Are we truly across what they're going to look like by the time they get to our treatment plants? And so a lot of safeguards in place, absolutely. But do we really understand the science behind us? It's important to put it back on communities like this as well to keep pushing in that space, keep looking.
If I could just add to that, I totally agree with what Rock and David just said, that in terms of the policy side, the policy and regulation is quite strong, and the ability of science to evolve and deal with those emerging pollutants is also very strong. If you think about, I was one of those people who was involved in one of the first sewer mining projects in Sydney, and when we did that, the conversation was, don't touch it, this stuff can kill, oh my God, this is going to be the end of the world. Wastewater reuse is now just common, and we're managing it really well. I think the risk management maturity of the water industry is second to none, and I think that'll certainly help us be able to deal with those challenges.
Could I also just add to that conversation? I just think, picking up on what you're saying about the the chemical industries and stuff. In in the solid waste sector, we have extended producer responsibility or product stewardship, and that might mean those who are producing cars or computers are responsible for the end of life contaminants and components, and they either have to take them back and deal with it, or they might say, you know what, I'm going to design that better, not just for deconstruction, but without chemicals and contaminants. So how can we apply these principles of extended producer responsibility to the water sector, so it's not just these end-of-pipe solutions that we have to deal with, it's some 80,000 contaminants now, isn't there, in wastewater, or that order of magnitude. So how can we share that responsibility with the pharmaceutical and chemical industry before it gets down the drain, because things are going to continue to emerge. So yeah, I'd like to see us thinking even bigger.
Good point. I think we've got a question here at the front.
Thank you. It's Enrico from Griffith University Environmental Health. Thank you to all the speakers. There's a million questions and conversations we could have. Rock and David, I wanted to pick up, Rock, I can't even imagine planning water supplies to 2050 like you have to. You're doing marvellous things with purified recycled water. When you mentioned stormwater in Western Sydney, that's a climate dependent resource. It needs rainfall and it'll work well when it's raining, but planning for climate change and heat, people living in non-affordable housing and small blocks, and they need to have that cooling wet. Have you thought of recycled wastewater that's not purified to drinking water standard, just it's more climate independent as a source to allow these more people-friendly communities? Thanks.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, and so when I was talking about integrated water cycle management, it's storm water, but it's actually also recycled water. So and you can't design a city based on stormwater because when it's dry, and we know that we live in a country where we have droughts and we will have droughts again in the future. So actually in this design, the system is also supplemented by recycled water. So there's stormwater when there's stormwater. When there's no stormwater left, then it goes back to recycled water, and then you still have water for parks and gardens and trees and etc. Yeah, it's part of the design.
And so that we did a housing estate, Aquariva, in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, where we estimated in a house about 30% of the water used in a house is actually drinking and food preparation. The rest is flushing toilets and washing machines, and doesn't need to be drinking water quality. So by the use of rainwater into the hot water system, recycled water into the laundry and the garden, we're averaging numbers about 50% less drinking water being used in those homes, about 460 homes now. Some homes have got 70% plus replacement of drinking water, so using of drinking water for drinking, but it needs to be planned at that kind of level and that infrastructure put in place to do it. So it's very possible if we use the right fit for purpose water in the right place at the right time. So definitely possible.
Conscious we're maybe cutting into morning tea, but I'm sure there's a few more questions in the audience. Over the back here.
Hi, just in front from GoTerra. We have an amazing female leader, Olympia Yaga, visionary CEO. We process food waste, harnessing the power of robotics and insects, so black soldier fly larvae. We then create insect protein that goes to aquaculture as fish meal, poultry and pet food. We also produce frass, so insect manure, with an NPK profile of 421, which has a fantastic carbon layer for basically holding water that would help in a sponge city. Touching on the entrepreneur, kind of nurturing the entrepreneurship, we envisage a world where humans won't have the luxury to waste food the way that we do. We need to find other ways to feed animals than we are. But we're a startup that's moving to scale up, and raising money out there is bloody hard at the moment. How does a startup that is trying to scale, that sees the future of processing using insects, moving into the biosolid phase, how do we foster and give these brilliant minds a chance to thrive in the future?
Justin, I think you're probably doing it. So being here, building relationships with the whole of your value chain, and then finding those funds that have a sustainability focus, finding the right fund manager, because there's a growing number of fund managers now at all levels in Australia. It's much better than it was 20 years ago. And you will find people who are looking for a return on investment that gives them social impact and environmental impact. And it sounds like you've got a great shot at it.
I thought it was interesting, Dana's slides, right at the end, the transformation readiness. That's the first time I've seen that, and I'm not sure how long that's been kicking around. And, we often talk about technology readiness, TR levels, or even CR, commercialisation readiness. I think that was a great list to actually tick off. Might have some great tech, and I'm guilty of falling into that. Got some great tech. This pyrolysis bioscience must do it. Oh, what about the market? What about all those other things that this is transformational, and we really worked our way through it. And I'm sure you've spent a lot of time and space to do that, but there's a lot of persistence required. I don't know, did you want to add, Dana, on that transformational readiness?
Well, I guess only in the, I can't remember what colour it was, but I guess the policy readiness. So what kind of policies are ready to support these kinds of technologies? Because I think there's still a bit of a vacuum and we need more of that. But I was also wondering about in Fiji, because I couldn't help but notice the slide that Amit put up yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, of the amount of food and organic waste in Fiji. If this is something that's happening in Fiji using this technology, and what would it take?
One good thing about Fiji is that we are still sort of developing that solid waste management framework, and there certainly is opportunity to look at the opportunity to divert the organic and food waste in particular. There is, as I understand, there's a trade delegation going from New South Wales and ACT to Fiji in the coming weeks. By all means, be part of that process, and we can certainly talk during morning tea to see how we can, exchange some ideas. But there are opportunities because of this limited land mass. There is only one functioning landfill site that has the ability to deal with leachate. So there is a critical need to look at alternatives, and those are the real drivers that will make these more innovative ideas more viable.
I think we're going to have to call it there, maybe take it to morning tea. I'm really sorry. I would have loved to have had a bit more time for the panel, so apologies about that. Before I thank these guys, just wanted to remind any speakers for their upcoming sessions if they could please upload, see the organisers, and upload their slides during morning tea. But can you please join me in thanking the speakers and no doubt, but please continue the conversations over morning tea. Thanks all.
Yeah, that's